I did want to ask you about one of the more heartbreaking moments. And look, there have been a lot of those in Chiefs history in terms of some just stunning losses. And you and I chatted about this a little bit before on the phone. But it was the game in 1996, I believe, January of 1996, when you guys played the Colts.
Oh,
And look, I think everyone knows the story.
yeah.
You guys lost that game 10-7, and there was just so much hype that year. I mean, I'm actually looking at the stat sheet right now, looking at the offensive and defensive starters. I mean, you've just got talent all around on both sides. So I'm sure there was a lot of hype that year, and just everybody thought this was going to be the year for the Chiefs. I mean, especially defensively that year in the 90s. It was just an insane year for Kansas City. But look, everyone knows the story about Lin Elliott. He attempts the 3 field goals, misses all of them. I know in the AFC Championship game against the Patriots, when D Ford was offsides, and look, I get that in the moment, it's always the most crucial moment in a game. People always point the finger at that player or that moment. And I remember Travis Kelce, even during the parade, he would say, "Oh, we had 55 and he wasn't offsides." Like, even players have made references to certain crucial moments that cost a team a game. Look, I've always been a believer, the refs never lose you a game. It's never one player or one turnover. There are so many factors at play, like that AFC Championship game, for example. If you score in the first half of that game, maybe the whole D Ford situation isn't as big of a factor as it ended up being. But a lot of Chiefs fans, they look at that game, it's referred to as a Lin Elliott game. As a player who was there, who was on the field, can you give us the reaction? Because so many fans point the blame on Lin Elliott. Now, you guys are a brotherhood. You guys are teammates. Yeah, you guys don't necessarily do that kind of thing. But were there players that just really felt awful about that, or maybe did they just held it against Lin Elliott? Take me through what it was at the end of the game and in the locker room after that game.
Well, where I'll start with it, Farzin, is number one. I think it was up until that point. I think it was the closest mentally we had ever been to the Super Bowl. Obviously, short of playing in the Super Bowl, in the Len Dawson era. But up until that point, it was probably the closest mentally we were to the Super Bowl, even though physically we were closer to the Super Bowl in '93 when we went to the AFC Championship game, right? That was a different run. That was a magical run, beating Pittsburgh in overtime, going down to the House of Pain, right? And beating the Oilers, on their turf after they won 11 straight. Like, we almost, like, when we got to Buffalo, it was like, okay, when we lost that game, it was heartbreaking because we were this close to getting the Super Bowl physically. But like, we came off that emotional high and we're like, all right, hey, that was a great run. That season, the way that we dominated so much on defense and the way that our offense put up some great numbers, we were clicking on all cylinders in the run game. Steve Bono was, having a fantastic, he was just having a fantastic season. We had that crazy game in Phoenix when we had that 76-yard run where I escorted him down the field, and then I ended up scoring again in that game. It was like we just had all this great stuff going on, and then to get that close, mentally, to have home field throughout, to be 13-3,
yeah,
and to for so much hype for people, because the Super Bowl that year was in Phoenix, and to beat Phoenix in Phoenix the way that we beat them in that game, not the Phoenix we were thinking we were going to play them, but to be on that field in Tempe and to think, oh, this is like, smell it here, guys, because this is what it's going to be like. We're going to be back here in January, February, playing the Super Bowl. It's just like, that season just had so much to it. And I think that's what took the emotion into the way that a lot of the people who were around the team felt about, like, what Lin Elliott was unable to do in that game by converting those field goals. But as a player, you're all you've got, right, in the locker room. And there's a million cliches, whether it be the biblical cliche of, let he who has not sinned cast the first stone, let he who has never had a penalty that's cost a team a game be the one to cast the first stone. People in glass houses shouldn't throw stones, right? Like
Yeah.
we all make mistakes. And I think that's the one thing that players understand. And that's why, you brought up the great point on the D Ford thing. Like, players just like, look, it happens, man. It's like, it happens to all of us. And, there's no reason why it should have even come down to Lin Elliott missing 3 field goals. Like that game, we should have dominated that Colts team. We should have pounded them. We were averaging 5 yards a carry in the first half, and it was freezing. It was ice cold game. And we abandoned the run in the second half, and we started throwing the ball. And Steve was, it's his first big playoff start, right? It just was a comedy of errors, that go into something like that. But as a player, you look at a guy like Lin Elliott, and we still go back and forth to this day. Long snappers and their kickers and their holders and punters, we have a bond, and I still have that bond with.
You were a long snapper?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
And so, I think back to my time that I spent with Lynn and Louis Aguiar and Brian Barker and all the Nick Lowry and everybody that was, part of that whole long, snapper, kicker, punter, trio. I still talk to Lynn, and we still communicate, and I he's a great guy. He's a fantastic guy. He's an unbelievable human being. And, it shouldn't have come down to that. And so I would defend a teammate I take it to the hill, because I think that's what players do in the locker room. They take care of each other, because you're all you got. But I do understand why fans and why the city would be emotional about that, because we were so darn close.
Yeah.
So darn close to getting to the Super Bowl that year.
How was Lin Elliott in the locker room after that game?
He was a mess. He was a mess. He was an absolute mess. He put the whole weight of the entire Chiefs organization and the city on his back. And I really felt for him for that, because I think it really did affect him. It was just, it was it for him. That was it. And I think he understood why his tenure was over and why he probably wasn't going to play, in the NFL any further after that. And that's what happens to all of us. We end up, somebody bigger, faster, stronger comes along, and it ends. And so, but I felt really bad for him for that, because he had the entire weight of the city on his shoulders, and he was dejected, and he felt it, and it was palpable. It was palpable how hard that hit him.